Welcome to the final installment, examining government's work in its first 100 days in office. As we have seen in our previous episodes, the administration has put in place a number of measures to deliver on its promises to the people. Marano Isaacs will take us through the highlights of Day 80 to Day 100.
As the administration entered the final stretch of its first 100 days in office, it was clear that it was moving into a higher gear as it sought to effectively govern the country and deliver to the people. By October 22nd, the safe reopening of schools was top priority. Education Minister Priya Manikchand had disclosed that preparations were underway to have school reopened, following consultations with teachers, parents and students. Hand washing stations, adequate ventilation and adequate spacing had to be considered and implemented in the schools before they could be reopened for traditional learning. And while doors remained closed for face-to-face learning, the ministry continued to advance its efforts to ensure the minds of the nation's future were being stimulated. The distribution of print packages across the country allowed for learning in all age groups. By the last day of October, the Education Minister made one of the most significant announcements, following a stamp of approval from the National COVID-19 Task Force and the Cabinet. Schools would reopen on November 9th for CSEC, CAPE and TVET students. The reopening of school followed numerous multi-stakeholder fora the ministry held with the Ministry of Health, medical professionals, the Caribbean Examination Council CXC, the Guyana Teachers Union GTU, regional education officers REDOs, head teachers, teachers, parents, students and others.
We have procured masks and face shields and sanitizing products and vitamin support for teachers and for our students who are to return care packages. Thermometers will be provided to all schools. Adequate signage and information has also been acquired and will be widely available and conspicuously posted.
On the first day of school, a number of students weighed in on resuming face-to-face learning after an 8-month hiatus.
Well, I would say my first day of school was a bit difficult because of the new COVID-19 restrictions and the social distancing and so on.
My first day of school was very good. I felt good about it. Everybody was very spacious. I felt comfortable and I'm very glad I'm back to school.
While the Ministry of Education prepared for the reopening of schools, the Board of Industrial Training BIT was busy advancing its training of citizens in the fields of heavy maintenance operations, maintenance, cosmetology, food preparation, garment construction and introduction to agro-processing technologies. Over 145 persons in Region 5 were going to be the beneficiaries of these programs. In Labour, Minister Joseph Hamilton worked to ensure citizens were aware of the opportunities being offered. Community outreaches in Little Diamond and Herstelling, East Bank Demerara, among other communities, were held.
Under the Ministry of Labour, you have a department they call the Board of Industrial Training. And I will use that department to ensure that every community, their service, people are trained who want to be trained, so that in communities, people will be able to empower themselves.
The Ministry of Labour partnered with over 10 internationally recognized institutions to raise the standard of training while allowing for international certification. The PPPC government re-established the Ministry of Labour with a view of creating nobility in work, rewarding labour with adequate wages, and ensuring that the rights of workers in every sector, every industry and every business are respected. Minister Hamilton engaged several trade unions over the raising of the private sector minimum wage from $60,000 to a livable one. The Sugar Welfare Committee was also re-established, and efforts to end child labour through a legislative agenda are underway. During the first 100 days in office, the ministry was also able to establish working relationships with the Guyana American Chamber of Commerce, ExxonMobil Guyana, and the Maritime Administrative Department. These relationships have yielded training programs for staff development. The Ministry of Housing and Water also announced the removal of VAT on water countrywide. This announcement was the fulfillment of the PPPC's manifesto promises of ensuring affordable and potable water for all. Free water for pensioners also came into effect from October. On November the 9th, 40 contracts valued $1.1 billion were signed between government and 22 contractors at the Arthur Chung Conference Center. This represented 100% of the 2020 Capital Works Program and would benefit residents in regions 3, 4, 5, and 6. Over $675 million of the total sum represents contracts for roads and bridges, while the remainder was allotted for improved water, electrical, and waste management services.
Some of these contracts that you see here are for the opening of a number of new areas, and so hence that is why we could not have started our allocation process. It's very easy because if you examine the system as it is, at the end of 2019 there were 67,000 applicants in the system, active applicants. So it's very easy for us to pull from the system and make an allocation. But that is not what we want to do. We want to ensure that we put some infrastructure in place, which will also have the amenities of water and electricity.
And Minister Kroll made it clear that slothful and sloppy work will not be tolerated.
Contractors are required to give value for money. As was stated, we will not be accepting substandard work. We hold you, contractors, accountable, and for actions when not delivered, the necessary procedures will be followed. Timely completion of projects, therefore, must be parallel with the quality of work.
Meanwhile, Minister within the Ministry of Housing and Water, Suzanne Rodriguez, noted that the projects create employment for hundreds of Guyanese and ensures that the construction sector will boom.
Support and engage our local manufacturers and suppliers of construction and building materials as much as possible. This will stimulate growth in our economy. It is the same with the people you employ to execute these works. Your private sector input and the employment opportunities you will create with the works awarded today ties in with the bigger picture of job creation and stimulating economic growth.
Meanwhile, in infrastructure, commuters traversing the Linden-Soesdijk Highway can now look forward to seeing an upgrade as a road network plan was rolled out for the construction of the Linden to Lethem Road. As the country continued to welcome flights through the reopened airports, travelers were assured that they can enter the country in safety with stringent COVID-19 measures.
It is very safe to fly. The Civil Aviation Authority, together with other stakeholders, we do have measures and protocols in place to ensure that passengers are safely carried on these aircraft and also safely enter into the Guyana.
Both the Cheddi Jagan International Airport, CJIA, and the Eugene F. Correa International Airport, EFCIA, have added features such as social distancing markers, temperature sensors, and sanitization stations. With the reopened airports, the Public Works Minister said that Guyana could soon see an influx of new international airlines as the government entered discussions with Virgin Atlantic, WestJet, Inter-Caribbean Airways, and Fly Always. Major American airline JetBlue will begin its flights to Guyana on December 11th.
We want the world visiting Guyana, and we want Guyana visiting the world. We want to ensure that our air link and our air transportation is robust, accessible, predictable, reliable, and affordable.
Blackouts has been a major concern for citizens and business owners. In addressing these concerns, the government, through the Guyana Power and Light GPL, began purchasing 5 megawatts of power from the Giftland Mall to boost its grid.
We were really working aggressively to bring on this 5 additional megawatts of power to GPL grid because of generation capacity shortage we have, and obviously, evidently, you would see from time to time we have reliability issues.
The 5 megawatts of power will be added to GPL's Demerara-Berbice interconnected system. Later, there would be an announcement from the Vice President of the purchase of an additional 10 megawatts of power through MACORP, which will be accessible in time for the Christmas season. An additional 46 megawatts of energy is to come on stream as the government presses Wartsila Operations Guyana Incorporated to complete works procured under the former administration.
Right now, there are 46 megawatts of power. The engine there is here in the country, but it will have to sit and wait for several months, as much as 5 months, whilst the civil works is being done to accommodate the foundation work engine. There's no planning.
On the renewable energy front, government has approved several contracts to supply some hinterland regions with renewable energy. The Vice President says these initiatives are in keeping with Guyana's commitment to the Paris Agreement on climate change to become 100% reliant on renewable energy by 2025. Contracts have been approved to supply hydropower in Kumu Village in Region 9, with the Mokomoko Hydropower Station to be rehabilitated. In Bartica, Koyuni Mazaruni Region 7, and Madhya, Potaro Siparuni Region 8, solar farms are to be constructed. A similar project will be undertaken in Wakenham, Essequibo Islands, West Demerara Region 3, with the Amaila Hydro Falls project up for review. Noteworthy advancements were also made early November as the Ministry of Public Works awarded $99 million in contracts to 100 small contractors for weeding and cleaning services, creating 500 jobs across the country. Minister within the Ministry of Public Works, Deodat Indar, reminded of government's plan to create 50,000 jobs.
We made sure that it was not designed for big businesses, because what this was designed for is for the small man. Each person here might and should employ about 5 persons to do the weeding. Because of the contract, the size and the lots that you've been awarded, each person here would at least hire about 5 persons to do the weeding. Some of them are the CD fence, some of them are the road shoulders. So this simple gesture, this simple move, simple strategy, after this signing today, will put 500 persons back to work. Simple as it seems. That is why we wanted to bring you all here to explain to you that what we're doing here is creating employment for people.
With the view of transforming Guyana's landscape, the government advertised the expressions of interest to secure investors for the construction of the new Demerara Harbour Bridge. This received massive traction, with approximately 50 international companies responding to realize the new 4-lane high-span fixed bridge from Nandi Park, East Bank Demerara to Lagrange, West Bank Demerara. This bridge is expected to enhance traffic flow, open new investment opportunities, and increase economic growth in the surrounding communities. As the world continues to grapple with the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, Guyana has made significant strides in its fight in a number of areas, including the upgrading of facilities, building capacity, and mobilizing of resources.
We had a meeting with the ambassador of Chile to Guyana, and one of the projects that we're working on is to train clinicians in Guyana. So from the 2nd of November to the 20th of November, there will be specialized training that would be offered by the Chilean authorities on the management of COVID-19. It's actually a very extensive course looking at different aspects of COVID-19 management. So how do you detect the signs and symptoms, what to look for, and then of course how to do ventilatory management and other complications that would arise from COVID-19.
Training has also been sourced from the United States for regional health officials with a keen focus on far-flung areas. Remdesivir has been approved as a drug to treat COVID-19. The Ministry of Health received a donation of the drug from Ansa Macal Trading Limited to aid Guyana's fight against COVID-19. COVID-19 testing capacity was also boosted in Region 2. 2 ventilators were handed over to the region along with several PCR testing kits. Antigen testing kits have also been ordered for the region. All this while COVID-19 emergency measures were reviewed and adjusted based on trends. The Minister of Health explained that while there may be some instances where persons were negligent, overall compliance of the COVID-19 protocols had increased across the board. Government was also able to equip the $1.6 billion Lilian Dahl facility to cater to COVID patients.
We have been able to install the oxygen lines, the suction lines, and other gas that is needed. So that has now been completed. The oxygen banks and so forth are all in place. And we are now moving in the beds that would be there for the ICU.
On the foreign affairs front, Guyana successfully chaired the virtual meeting of G77 and China. President Dr. Mohamed Irfan Ali called for an integrated response to the threats of the COVID-19 pandemic and actions against climate change.
The immediate task of containing, mitigating, and eventually eradicating the COVID-19 coronavirus must not force us to ignore the challenges of protecting the environment and the need for collective action.
The President also advocated for greater financing mechanisms so that member states can achieve the 2030 agenda.
As chairman of the Group of 77 and China, I call for greater access to climate financing for developing countries. Many developing countries, due to high indebtedness, are constrained in their efforts to generate sufficient resources towards achieving the 2030 agenda.
Vice President Dr. Bharat Jagdeo echoed the sentiments of the head of state as he too called for solidarity among member states.
We need financing at scale now, not in the future, but now. And there are already pools of money where pledges have been made that we have to work as a group to unlock. And we probably will need the solidarity of the group and the bigger countries in this group to help us to do that.
That aside, at the nation's address at the 50th Organization of American States General Assembly, Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation Minister Hugh Todd lobbied for greater support for small nations. Closer to home, but with an international focus, the head of state embarked on a journey to end violence against women and girls, with critical support from the European Union. The EU will be contributing 4.5 million euros or 1 billion Guyana dollars towards Guyana's efforts to combat gender-based violence.
I think this initiative will impact on many lives, and it's an absolute pleasure to work along with the European Union and United Nations to launch the Spotlight Initiative, and I believe Guyana will benefit tremendously. So we look forward to this and working in close collaboration going forward.
Government has since resuscitated the Gender-Based Violence Task Force and will be implementing the National Plan of Action Against Gender-Based Violence. The PPPC's manifesto speaks to empowering women, taking care of the nation's children, persons with special needs and other vulnerable groups. During its 100 days in office, the Ministry of Human Services and Social Security commenced the direct delivery of old age pensions to 3,400 shut-in pensioners and signed an agreement with Western Union and MoneyGram to encash old age pension vouchers. This is to ensure that post offices are not overwhelmed. The government also piloted the rollout of the Garment and Accessories Cottage Industry Initiative aimed at providing employment opportunities for vulnerable individuals who will be tasked with sewing over 200,000 masks for distribution countrywide. Minister of Human Services and Social Security, Dr. Vindya Prasad, announced too that $5.6 million will be spent to enhance the mental health and wellness of children housed at state-run facilities, including the night shelter. With a heavy focus on reopening the sugar estates, Minister of Agriculture Zulfikar Mustafa said government will appoint a management team at the Guyana Sugar Corporation that is capable of achieving these objectives.
We know for a fact over the years, management have neglected Gaisuko so much. We have had so much corruption and so much wastage in Gaisuko that also has contributed to the downfall of Gaisuko. We will relook at the performance of all the entire managerial staff of Gaisuko.
The rice sector was also reinvigorated with a new variety of rice for cultivation. The Burma station will make available 4,700 bags of seeds to farmers for sowing.
The government will continue to make the necessary investments in research and development, infrastructures, and design the relevant policies to ensure that the rice industry keeps growing and remain competitive and sustainable both locally and internationally.
In the meantime, Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs Anil Nandlal has sought the assistance of the Guyana Police Force and its Special Organized Crime Unit SOCU to investigate the land giveaways and to provide answers to the nation. Much of Gaisuko's lands were privatized through deals by the National Industrial and Commercial Investments Limited, NISIL. The AG said the distribution of state lands included prime commercial and agricultural assets at the Wales Estate, West Bank Demerara, Ogle, East Coast Demerara, and Peters Hall on the East Bank Demerara. Aside from this, the Attorney General met with squatters at Sarah Johanna on the east bank of Demerara to address the controversy over the land they have been occupying for several years. Minister within the Housing and Water Ministry, the Honorable Suzanne Rodriguez, who also accompanied the Attorney General, used the opportunity to register several of the squatters for house lots. Still on the legal affairs front and in the Parliament, the Law Reform Commission Bill, Small Business, Bail, Hire Purchase, the Natural Resources Commission, and Solid Waste Management Bills are all to be laid. In the energy sector, Guyana received her third payment for the sale of crude. The payment of royalties totaled US $4,304,275, which resulted in a grand total of $140 million in the Natural Resources Fund. This news was followed by an announcement by Minister of Natural Resources Vikram Bharat that the government has engaged potential investors who are interested in developing the Tarakuli bauxite deposit located some 10 miles away from Oriala, East Berbice Quarantine. The investors are also eyeing the construction of an aluminum plant.
The aluminum plant now would add value to our ore because for too long we have been exporting raw materials. We haven't been exporting value-added products. And you would know that when you export value-added products, you earn maybe 10 times more than when you export the logs or the raw material.
The announcement was made in Oriala during a meeting with residents. There he also handed over their $25,000 COVID-19 cash grants, a measure among several announced by the head of state to cushion the economic impact of COVID-19. One of the promises fulfilled by the PPP administration has been the restoration of the Community Support Officers or Cso program to provide employment and training opportunities for Amerindian communities. 46 young people have been identified to participate in the Information and Communication Technology training under the program. This completes the ongoing Cso program, from which some 400 youths are currently benefiting. The youths are all engaged in training related to their various fields of interest and are being paid a monthly stipend of $30,000. Meanwhile, significant strides were also made by the Ministry of Local Government as the first 100 days neared. President Ali made a key cabinet appointment as he swore in Dr. Ashni Kumar Singh as Senior Minister with responsibility for finance within the Office of the President.
Dr. Ashni Singh will be part of the team under the umbrella of the Office of the President, which will oversee the transformative agenda of the government, which includes projects, programs, and policies that will stimulate, expand, and widen our economic base, whilst at the same time strengthening existing sectors.
Dr. Singh, who served as Finance Minister under the Dr. Bharat Jagdeo and Donald Ramatar administrations from 2006 to 2015, said he is thrilled to be back in Cabinet.
I'm entering this office at a time when the Guyanese economy and indeed the global economy is facing, the Guyanese economy and economies around the world are facing tremendous challenges, not least as a result of the ongoing COVID pandemic. President Ali's government has been very swift to recognize the magnitude of these challenges and has been very swift in crafting policy responses to address these challenges, but we are far from out of the woods. There's still a lot of work to be done. And so I'm under no illusion about the magnitude of the challenges that are before us from the point of view of economic policy making and economic policy management, implementation and management.
Following this, President Ali also announced a massive infrastructural transformation and huge spin-off benefits from the construction of a 4-lane highway in Region 3, running from the new Demerara Harbour Bridge to Parika.
Part of the transformation is about creating new infrastructure, converting low-value land or marginal land into high-value asset, and having a development mix that they take into consideration expansion of agriculture, opening up of tourism opportunity, housing development, industrial development, commercial development.
The head of state said that government will be utilizing the service of local experts in its construction.
We're going to put together a local team. When you talk about local content, we have the Army here, we have the Ministry of Public Works, Guyanese-based engineers, GIS specialists, and the private sector, local knowledge. We are bringing them together to commence the conceptual work in laying out this new highway.
During the government's first 100 days in office, Guyana has seen unprecedented growth in a relatively short period. The PPPC administration has demonstrated through its decisive actions and people-centered approach that it is committed to realizing its promises to citizens. The government is moving forward with its plan for prosperity in which every Guyanese stands to benefit, irrespective of race, class, or age.
Thank you, Marano. The government's first 100 days in office have been characterized by major decisions, particularly infrastructural and economic measures to reduce the burden on the people and fortify the country's fight against the COVID-19 pandemic. I'm Natasha Smith. Thank you for joining us this past week as we examined government's first 100 days in office. Take care, stay safe, remember to mask up, sanitize, and practice social distancing. Goodbye.